The auction block reeked of sweat and despair. Leilani stood with her head bowed, iron shackles cutting into her wrists as the auctioneer's voice boomed through the underground chamber. Her threadbare dress barely covered her trembling frame, and beneath the grime and bruises, she tried to make herself invisible. If she could just survive this, if she could just endure whatever came next, maybe she could find a way to escape. Maybe. Lot 73, Omega female, age 24, captured from the Shadowpine territory. Starting bid at 500 gold. Leilani's breath came in shallow gasps. The crowd of alpha males surrounding the platform leered at her with expressions ranging from curiosity to outright cruelty. She'd heard the stories of what happened to Omegas sold at these auctions. How they were worked to death in the mines, or worse, kept as playthings for brutal packmasters who saw them as nothing more than property. Her wolf whimpered inside her, so weak from the suppressant drugs they'd forced down her throat that she could barely feel the connection anymore. They'd been drugging her for 3 weeks, ever since the raid on her small pack had left her as the only survivor. Everyone she'd loved was gone. Her parents, her younger brother, the elderly alpha who'd protected their peaceful community, all slaughtered by the Blood Claw Alliance, a coalition of rogue packs that profited from the illegal Omega trade. Do I hear 500? 500 gold for a prime Omega specimen. A hand shot up from the back. Leilani didn't look. She couldn't bear to see the face of whoever would own her next. 500 to the gentleman from the Iron Forge pack. Do I hear 600? Another hand, then another. The bids climbed, 600, 700, 850. Each number was another nail in the coffin of her freedom. Leilani's knees shook, and she locked them, refusing to collapse. She wouldn't give them the satisfaction of seeing her break. Not yet. That's when the temperature in the room seemed to drop. A presence unlike anything Leilani had ever felt rolled through the chamber like a physical wave. It was power, raw and absolute, and it made every wolf in the room, including her, freeze in primal recognition. Even through the fog of suppressants, she felt her wolf struggle to the surface, suddenly alert in a way she hadn't been in weeks. 10,000 gold! The voice came from the entrance, deep and resonant and utterly final. Silence crashed over the crowd. Leilani's head jerked up before she could stop herself, and her eyes locked onto the figure standing in the doorway. He was massive, easily 6.5 feet tall, with broad shoulders that filled the entrance. Dark hair fell to his collar, and his eyes, gods, his eyes were the color of molten amber, burning with an intensity that made her breath catch. He wore black from head to toe, and the air around him seemed to shimmer with barely contained power. This wasn't just any alpha. This was an alpha king, and he was staring directly at her. The bond hit her like lightning. Even through the suppressants, even through the drugs and the exhaustion and the trauma, Leilani felt it snap into place. The mate bond. The thing she'd stopped believing in, the fairy tale her mother had told her about when she was small. It was real. It was real, and it was connecting her to the most powerful wolf she'd ever seen. Her wolf howled in recognition, throwing herself against the chemical barriers in Leilani's system, desperate to reach their mate. Leilani gasped, stumbling on the platform, and the shackles bit deeper into her wrists. The Alpha King's eyes flashed gold, and the temperature dropped another 10 degrees. I said 10,000 gold. Does anyone wish to counter my bid? The auctioneer had gone pale. He was sweating now, his earlier bravado evaporating like morning dew. 10,000 to His Majesty, King Theodore of the Northern Realm. Going once." No one moved. No one breathed. The other bidders were staring at the floor, at the walls, anywhere but at the imposing figure in the doorway. Leilani could smell their fear, acrid and sharp. "Going twice? Sold to His Majesty!" King Theodore, Theo, her mind whispered traitorously, moved through the crowd like a blade through silk. They parted for him instantly, pressing themselves against the walls. When he reached the platform, he didn't climb the steps. He simply looked at the auctioneer and held out one hand. The key. The auctioneer fumbled with the ring of keys at his belt, his hands shaking so badly he dropped them twice. Finally, he managed to hand them over, and Theo climbed onto the platform in one fluid motion. Up close, he was even more devastating. Leilani could see the sharp line of his jaw, the small scar above his left eyebrow, the way his lips pressed into a hard line as he took in her shackles, her bruises, the hollow look in her eyes. Something flickered across his face. Rage, she thought, pure and cold, before his expression smoothed into careful neutrality. He unlocked the shackles with swift, efficient movements, and the iron fell away from her wrists with a clatter that echoed through the silent chamber. Leilani swayed, her legs nearly giving out, but before she could fall, Theo caught her. His hands were warm and steady on her arms, and the touch sent sparks racing across her skin. "Easy, I've got you." His voice was different when he spoke to her, gentler. The mate bond pulsed between them, and Leilani felt tears prick at her eyes. She didn't understand what was happening. Why would an alpha king come to an illegal slave auction? Why would he pay 10,000 gold for her? And how could he possibly be her mate? Before she could voice any of these questions, Theo scooped her into his arms as if she weighed nothing. Leilani wanted to protest, to tell him she could walk, but her body had other ideas. The moment she was cradled against his chest, inhaling his scent of cedar and winter rain, something inside her relaxed for the first time in weeks. "This auction is over. My guards will be confiscating all slaves present and arresting everyone involved in this operation. The Omega trade has been illegal in the Northern Realm for 2 decades, and I find it deeply offensive that it's operating in my territory." Chaos erupted. Men shouted, scrambling for the exits, but they found them blocked by a dozen heavily armed guards in the silver and blue of the Northern Realm. The auctioneer tried to run and was immediately tackled. Through it all, Theo didn't pause. He carried Leilani out of the underground chamber, up a flight of stone stairs, and into the cool night air. She gulped it down, her lungs burning, and realized she was shaking uncontrollably. "You're safe now. I promise you, you're safe." But Leilani had learned not to trust promises. She'd learned that safety was an illusion, that everything you loved could be ripped away in a single night of violence and fire. So even as her wolf purred in contentment at being in their mate's arms, even as the bond thrummed with warmth and certainty, she held herself rigid and silent. Theo carried her to a carriage that was clearly built for royalty, glossy black lacquer with silver accents and the Northern Realm's crest emblazoned on the door. He settled her on the plush velvet seat inside and wrapped a fur-lined cloak around her shoulders before taking the seat across from her. As the carriage lurched into motion, Leilani finally found her voice. "Where are you taking me?" Theo's amber eyes met hers, and she saw something in them that made her breath catch. Not cruelty, not ownership. Something that looked almost like reverence. "To my palace. You need a healer, food, rest, and safety. I'm taking you home." "Home? I don't have a home anymore." His jaw tightened. "You do now. I know you can feel it, the bond between us. You're my mate, and that makes you my queen. No one will ever hurt you again." The words should have been comforting, but they terrified her. Queen? She was an Omega from a destroyed pack, drugged and brutalized and sold like cattle. She was nobody, nothing. How could she possibly be anyone's queen? "I can't. You don't understand. I'm broken. They drugged me and my wolf is barely there and Leilani." The sound of her name on his lips stopped her spiral. She stared at him and he leaned forward, his elbows on his knees, bringing them eye to eye. "I don't know what you've been through. I can see it's been hell. But you're not broken. You're a survivor. And yes, I feel the mate bond. I've felt it since the moment I walked into that room and saw you. I've been searching for you my entire life." "How did you even know about the auction?" "I've had my people infiltrating the Omega trafficking rings for months. We've been trying to shut them down, but they keep moving, keep adapting. When we got word about tonight's auction, I came myself. I thought we might finally catch the ringleaders." He paused, his eyes searching her face. "I didn't expect to find you." Leilani wrapped the cloak tighter around herself, trying to process everything. The mate bond was singing in her veins, urging her to trust him, to lean into the connection. But her rational mind, the part that had kept her alive through the worst 3 weeks of her life, was screaming at her to be cautious. "What happens now?" "Now we get you healthy. The suppressants they gave you will wear off in a few days, and your wolf will come back fully. We'll make sure you're fed and safe, and then we figure out the rest together." "What if I don't want to be queen?" Something flickered in his eyes, and for a moment, he looked almost vulnerable. "Then you don't have to be. The mate bond doesn't mean ownership, Leilani. It means partnership. You have a choice. You'll always have a choice with me." The carriage ride to the palace took 2 hours, and Leilani drifted in and out of consciousness for most of it. Every time she jerked awake, panicking, Theo was there, his steady presence grounding her. He didn't try to touch her again, didn't push. He just sat across from her, watchful and protective, and slowly, incrementally, she began to believe that maybe he really wouldn't hurt her. The palace was breathtaking. Leilani had never seen anything like it. White stone towers that seemed to touch the clouds, illuminated by thousands of glowing crystals that lined the pathways. Gardens sprawled in every direction, and the scent of night-blooming jasmine filled the air. Theo lifted her from the carriage before she could protest, and she was too tired to fight him. He carried her through corridors of marble and gold, past guards who bowed deeply and servants who whispered in his wake. Finally, he pushed open a set of double doors and entered a suite that made Leilani's breath catch. The room was enormous, with floor-to-ceiling windows that overlooked the moonlit gardens. A massive 4-poster bed dominated one wall, draped in silks the color of midnight. A fireplace crackled cheerfully, and there was a door that she assumed led to a bathing chamber. Theo set her gently on the bed, and immediately, a middle-aged woman in healer's robes bustled in. "Oh, you poor dear. Let's get you looked at, shall we?" The healer's name was Marin, and her hands were gentle as she examined Leilani, tisking at the bruises and the lingering effects of the suppressants. Theo stood by the fireplace, his back to them, giving Leilani privacy but refusing to leave entirely. "She's malnourished and dehydrated, Your Majesty. The suppressants will take 3 to 4 days to fully clear her system. I'll prepare some tinctures to help with the pain and to strengthen her wolf. What she needs most is rest, food, and time." "She'll have all 3. Thank you, Marin." After the healer left, a maid brought in a tray of food, warm soup, fresh bread, fruit, and cheese. Leilani stared at it like it might disappear if she looked away. She couldn't remember the last time she'd had a real meal. "Eat, please. You need your strength." She picked up the spoon with trembling hands and took a sip of the soup. It was the most delicious thing she'd ever tasted, rich and savory, and she had to force herself to eat slowly instead of gulping it down. Theo watched her with an expression she couldn't quite read, and when she'd managed to eat about half the food, he spoke again. "I'll leave you to rest. This is your room now. Mine is through that door if you need anything, but I won't come in unless you ask me to. You're safe here, Leilani, I swear it." He moved toward the connecting door, and Leilani felt a sudden, irrational surge of panic. The bond flared, and her wolf whimpered at the thought of him leaving. "Wait." He turned, and she saw hope flash across his face. Could you just stay until I fall asleep? I don't want to be alone." His expression softened, and he nodded. "Of course." Theo settled into a chair by the fireplace while Leilani changed into the soft nightgown the maid had left for her and climbed into bed. The sheets were like clouds, and the mattress was so soft she thought she might sink right through it. She lay there, watching the firelight dance across the ceiling, and for the first time in weeks, she felt something like peace. "Theo, why did you really come to the auction yourself? You're a king. You could have sent anyone." There was a long pause, and when he spoke, his voice was rough with emotion. "Because I've been looking for you for 10 years. Because I'm 34 years old and I'd started to think I'd never find my mate. Because the moon goddess herself couldn't have kept me away once I knew there was even a chance you might be there." Leilani's heart clenched. She wanted to say something, to respond to the vulnerability in his voice, but exhaustion was pulling her under like a riptide. Her eyes drifted closed, and the last thing she felt before sleep claimed her was the warm, steady pulse of the mate bond, anchoring her to the alpha king who'd bought her freedom with 10,000 gold. She woke to sunlight streaming through the windows and the smell of fresh coffee. For a moment, she didn't remember where she was, and panic seized her. Was she back in the cage? Back in the auction house? But then she felt the soft sheets, saw the beautiful room, and memory came flooding back. Theo, the mate bond, the palace. A knock at the door made her tense. "Leilani, are you awake? May I come in?" She pulled the covers up to her chin. "Yes?" The door opened, and Theo entered carrying a tray laden with breakfast foods. He'd changed from last night's black clothing into more casual attire, dark pants and a white shirt that did nothing to hide the powerful build beneath. His hair was slightly damp, as if he'd just bathed, and Leilani's wolf stirred at the sight of him, interested in a way she hadn't been interested in anything for weeks. "Good morning. I thought you might be hungry." He set the tray on the table by the window and gestured to the second chair. Leilani climbed out of bed, suddenly self-conscious in just the nightgown, but Theo's eyes remained respectfully on her face. They ate in companionable silence for a while, and Leilani marveled at the food: fluffy eggs, crispy bacon, pastries that melted on her tongue, fresh fruit that tasted like summer. She ate until she was full for the first time in months. "How are you feeling this morning?" "Sore, confused, a little less terrified than yesterday." His lips quirked into an almost smile. "That's progress." "Leilani, I know this is all overwhelming. You don't know me, and you have no reason to trust me beyond the mate bond. So I want to make you a promise." He set down his coffee cup and looked at her directly. "You're free. You can leave whenever you want. You can accept or reject the mate bond. You can choose to be my queen or choose to live quietly somewhere far from court politics. Whatever you decide, I'll respect it. The only thing I ask is that you give yourself time to heal before you make any major decisions. Give yourself a chance to get your strength back." Leilani studied him, searching for any sign of deception, but all she saw was sincerity. Why are you being so kind to me? Because you're my mate. Because you've been hurt enough. Because kindness costs me nothing and means everything to you. Something in her chest cracked open. She'd been so focused on survival for so long that she'd forgotten what it felt like to be treated with basic human decency. Tears welled in her eyes, and she looked away, embarrassed. Hey, it's okay. You're allowed to cry here. You're allowed to feel whatever you need to feel. And just like that, the dam broke. Leilani buried her face in her hands and sobbed, and all the grief and terror and exhaustion of the past weeks came pouring out. She cried for her parents, for her brother, for the peaceful life she'd never get back. She cried for the loss of innocence, for the scars that would never fully fade, for the way the world had revealed itself to be so much crueler than she'd ever imagined. Through it all, Theo stayed in his chair, not crowding her, but present. When her sobs finally quieted to hiccups, he handed her a handkerchief, and she took it gratefully. I'm sorry. I didn't mean to fall apart like that. Don't apologize. Not for that. Not ever. The days that followed fell into a strange but comforting rhythm. Leilani spent most of her time in her suite, regaining her strength. Marin came daily to check on her, and true to the healer's prediction, her wolf began to resurface as the suppressants faded from her system. It was like watching a flower bloom after a long winter, slow at first, then all at once. Theo visited every morning and evening, bringing food and conversation. He told her about the Northern Realm, about his duties as king, about the reforms he'd been implementing to protect omegas and other vulnerable wolves. He asked her about her life before the attack, and slowly, haltingly, she began to share her memories. My pack was small but happy. We lived in the forest, mostly keeping to ourselves. My father was a woodworker, and my mother made the most beautiful tapestries. My brother Kai, he was only 15. He wanted to be a healer like Marin. Theo listened to every word, his attention unwavering. They sound like wonderful people. I'm so sorry you lost them. The Bloodclaw Alliance didn't even give us a chance to surrender. They just attacked at dawn, killed everyone who fought back, and rounded up the survivors to sell. I only escaped the initial slaughter because I was gathering herbs in the forest when they came. By the time I got back, it was too late to save anyone. The Bloodclaw Alliance will answer for what they've done. I've already sent word to my allies. We're coordinating a strike against their operations. Leilani looked up, surprised. You'd do that? Even though they're not in your territory? They attacked my mate's family. They're trafficking innocent people. Of course I'll do something about it. This isn't just about revenge, though that's certainly part of it. It's about making sure this never happens to anyone else. By the 5th day, Leilani was strong enough to leave her suite. Theo offered to show her the palace, and she accepted, curious despite her lingering anxiety. The place was even more magnificent than she'd realized. Soaring ceilings painted with scenes from wolf mythology, gardens that seemed to go on forever, a library that made her gasp in delight. I've never seen so many books in one place. You like to read? I love it. My mother taught me when I was small. We didn't have many books, but I read everything I could get my hands on. Then this library is yours. Take whatever you want, whenever you want it. They spent the afternoon there, Theo showing her his favorite sections, sharing recommendations. It was the most normal Leilani had felt since before the attack, and she realized with a start that she was actually enjoying herself. That evening, Theo invited her to dinner in his private dining room. It was a smaller, more intimate space than the grand hall she'd glimpsed earlier, with a table set for two and candles providing soft light. As they ate, Theo seemed nervous, which was such a departure from his usual confidence that Leilani found herself smiling. "Are you okay? You seem agitated." He ran a hand through his hair. "I have something I need to tell you. Several things, actually. And I'm not sure how you're going to react." Her smile faded. "What is it?" "First, the strike against the Bloodclaw Alliance happens tomorrow. We've located their main compound, and we have intelligence that suggests several of their leaders will be there. If you want to come, if you want to see them brought to justice, I'll take you. But I'll understand if it's too much." Leilani's heart pounded. The thought of facing the wolves who destroyed her life was terrifying, but the thought of hiding while they were brought down felt wrong. "I want to come. I need to see it." He nodded slowly. "Then you'll come. But there's more. The council has been pressuring me about our mating. They want to know when we'll complete the bond, when you'll be formally recognized as queen. I've been putting them off, but they're getting insistent." "What did you tell them?" "I told them it's none of their damn business, and that we'll make that decision on our own timeline. But I wanted you to know the pressure exists. I don't want you to feel blindsided if some officious council member approaches you." Leilani appreciated his honesty, even as anxiety curled in her stomach. "Do you want to complete the bond?" Theo's eyes blazed gold. "Every second of every day. My wolf is going insane being this close to you without claiming you. But what I want doesn't matter. What matters is what you want, when you're ready, if you're ever ready." She looked down at her plate, her mind whirling. The mate bond was pulling at her constantly now that her wolf was stronger, urging her toward him. And if she was honest with herself, she was drawn to him beyond just the bond. He was kind, protective, passionate about justice. He made her feel safe. He made her feel seen. But was she ready to be his queen? To complete a bond that would tie them together forever? "I don't know what I want yet. Is that okay?" He reached across the table, and after a moment's hesitation, she let him take her hand. His palm was warm against hers, calloused from sword training. "It's more than okay. Take all the time you need. I'm not going anywhere." The attack on the Bloodclaw compound happened at dawn. Theo insisted that Leilani stay well back from the fighting, protected by a squad of his best guards, and she didn't argue. She wasn't a warrior. She could barely defend herself even now that her wolf was back. But she needed to witness this, needed to see the monsters who'd murdered her family face consequences. The compound was a ramshackle collection of buildings in a hidden valley, surrounded by crude fortifications. Theo's forces, over 200 warriors from allied packs, surrounded it on all sides. When the Alpha King's voice rang out, commanding the Bloodclaw Alliance to surrender, the response was a hail of arrows. The battle was brief but brutal. Theo's warriors were better trained, better equipped, and fighting for a righteous cause. Within an hour, the compound had fallen, and the surviving Bloodclaw members were being rounded up in chains. Leilani watched as they were forced to their knees in the courtyard. There, among them, she saw faces she recognized. The scarred alpha who'd led the raid on her pack. The female who'd injected her with suppressants and laughed at her tears. The male who'd driven her and the other captured omegas like cattle to the auction. Theo appeared at her side, blood spattering his armor. "Are you all right?" "I don't know. I thought seeing them captured would make me feel better, but I just feel empty." He put an arm around her shoulders and she leaned into him. "Justice isn't always satisfying in the moment, but they'll face trial, and they'll pay for what they've done. Your family didn't die for nothing." One of Theo's warriors approached and bowed. "Your Majesty, we found the records. Lists of every Omega they've trafficked, every pack they've raided. It's all here." Theo's expression hardened. "Good. Make copies and distribute them to every allied pack. I want every victim accounted for and every family notified." As the warrior hurried away, the scarred alpha who'd led the raid looked up and locked eyes with Leilani, his face twisted with rage. You're the Omega bitch who got away. This is your fault." Before Leilani could react, Theo moved. He was across the courtyard in seconds, his hand at the alpha's throat, lifting him off the ground with ease. The temperature dropped, and power rolled off Theo in waves that made everyone in the vicinity stagger back. "You will not speak to her. You will not look at her. You will not even think her name. She is your queen, and you are nothing but a dead wolf walking." He dropped the alpha, who collapsed, gasping. When Theo returned to Leilani's side, his eyes were still blazing gold, his wolf close to the surface. She should have been frightened by that display of violence, but instead, she felt protected, cherished, safe. "Thank you." His expression softened immediately. "Always." The ride back to the palace was quiet. Leilani stared out the carriage window, processing everything she'd seen. The Bloodclaw alliance was finished. The Omega trafficking ring was broken. Her family was still gone, but at least they'd been avenged. When they arrived back at the palace, instead of going to her room, Leilani followed Theo to his. He looked surprised but didn't comment, just opened the door and let her in. His suite was similar to hers, but more masculine, decorated in deep blues and silvers. She walked to the window and looked out at the gardens, gathering her courage. "I've been thinking about what you said, about the mate bond, about being queen." She heard him move closer, but he didn't touch her. "And?" "I'm terrified. I don't know how to be a queen. I don't know anything about court politics or ruling a realm. I'm just a girl from a small pack who likes reading and used to help her mother make tapestries." "That's fair. But I do know that I feel safe with you. I know that you've been nothing but kind and patient with me. I know that my wolf recognizes you as our mate, and my heart is starting to catch up." His eyes widened, hope flickering across his face. "Leilani, I want to try. I want to accept the bond, to be your mate, to learn how to be your queen. I'm still scared and I'm still healing, but I don't want to let fear keep me from something that could be beautiful." The joy that spread across his face took her breath away. He crossed the distance between them in 2 strides but stopped just short of touching her. "Are you sure? I don't want you to feel pressured." She reached up and cupped his face, feeling the warmth of his skin under her palm. "I'm sure. I choose you, Theo. I choose us." He kissed her then, gentle and worshipful, and the mate bond flared to life between them like fireworks. Leilani felt her wolf surge forward, rejoicing, and when Theo's wolf rose to meet hers, the connection snapped into place with an almost audible click. They were mates. Truly, completely, irrevocably. When they finally broke apart, both breathing hard, Theo rested his forehead against hers. "You're mine. And you're mine. I'm going to spend every day for the rest of our lives making sure you never regret this choice." That's a long time to make promises. Then I'd better get started. The formal mating ceremony was held a week later, once Marin declared Leilani fully recovered and the council stopped hyperventilating about the speed of the whole thing. It was a beautiful affair, held under the full moon in the palace gardens, with representatives from every allied pack in attendance. Leilani wore a gown of silver silk that made her feel like a princess from one of her childhood stories. Her hair was woven with moonflowers, and around her neck, Theo had placed a collar of diamonds and sapphires that marked her as queen. As they stood before the high priestess, exchanging vows and completing the mating ritual, Leilani looked into Theo's eyes and saw her future. It wasn't the future she'd imagined as a girl in the shadow pine forest, but it was beautiful in its own right. I, Theodore, Alpha King of the Northern Realm, take you, Leilani, as my mate, my queen, my equal. I vow to protect you, cherish you, and stand by your side through all the days of our lives. I, Leilani, take you, Theodore, as my mate, my king, my partner. I vow to trust you, support you, and build a life with you that honors both our strengths and our scars. When the priestess pronounced them mated, the crowd erupted in cheers, and Theo pulled her into a kiss that made her toes curl. Later, at the reception, as Leilani danced with her mate surrounded by the pack that was now her people, she thought about how far she'd come. From the auction block to a queen's throne, from a broken omega to a mated alpha's equal, from despair to hope. An older woman approached during a break in the music, bowing deeply. Your Majesty, thank you. My daughter was rescued from a trafficking ring 3 months ago, thanks to His Majesty's efforts. Seeing you here, seeing an Omega rise to Queen, it gives us all hope. Leilani felt tears prick her eyes, but they were good tears this time. Tell your daughter she's strong and she's survived. Tell her better days are coming. As the woman walked away, Theo appeared at her side and wrapped an arm around her waist. You're going to be an amazing queen. You already are. We'll figure it out together. Together. Always. 3 months later, Leilani stood in the council chambers, presenting her proposal for a network of safe houses for Omega refugees. The council members, most of whom had been skeptical of her at first, now listened attentively as she outlined her plans. We'll staff them with trained healers and guards. Any Omega fleeing abuse or trafficking will have a place to go, no questions asked. We'll help them resettle, find work, reconnect with family if possible. The program will be funded by taxes on luxury goods, so it won't burden the common pack members. One of the older council members nodded approvingly. A wise and compassionate plan, Your Majesty. I move to approve the proposal. The vote was unanimous. Afterward, Theo found her in the library, curled up in her favorite chair with the book. He sat on the arm of the chair and played with the strand of her hair. I heard the vote went well. They approved the whole thing. We can start setting up the first safe house next month. You're changing the world, you know that? One Omega at a time, one law at a time. You're making the Northern Realms safer for everyone. She set down her book and looked up at him. I'm just trying to make sure no one else goes through what I did. If I can spare even one person that pain, it's worth it. He leaned down and kissed her forehead. Have I mentioned lately that I love you? Not in the last hour. Unacceptable. I love you, Leilani. My mate, my queen, my everything. I love you too, Theo. Thank you for buying me that night. Thank you for seeing me when I was at my lowest and treating me like I was worth something. Thank you for being patient while I healed. You were always worth something. You were always worth everything. I just got lucky enough to be the one who found you. They sat there in comfortable silence, the afternoon sun streaming through the library windows, surrounded by books and possibilities. Outside, the Northern Realm thrived under their joint leadership. The Omega trafficking rings were being systematically dismantled. Safe houses were opening. Laws were changing. And at the center of it all was a girl who'd been sold at auction, and the Alpha King who'd paid 10,000 gold for the honor of calling her his mate. It wasn't a fairy tale ending. There were still hard days, still moments when Leilani woke from nightmares of the auction block, still challenges to face as she navigated her new role. But she faced them with Theo by her side and a whole realm of people who'd come to love and respect their Omega Queen. Some months later, Leilani discovered she was pregnant. The news filled her with joy and terror in equal measure. She'd always wanted children, but the thought of bringing a baby into the world when she still had nightmares sometimes felt overwhelming. Theo was ecstatic but gentle with her fears. "Our child will never know the fear you knew. They'll grow up safe and loved, with parents who would burn down the world to protect them. And you're going to be an incredible mother." "How do you know?" "Because you have the biggest heart of anyone I've ever met. Because you've survived hell and came out the other side still believing in kindness. Because you're you, and that's more than enough." Their daughter was born on a spring morning, with her mother's eyes and her father's determination. They named her Kaya, after Leilani's brother, and when Leilani held her for the first time, she wept with joy. "You're so loved, little one. You're going to grow up in a better world than the one I knew. Your daddy and I are going to make sure of it." Theo leaned over them both, his expression soft with wonder. "She's perfect. You're perfect. How did I get so lucky?" "We both got lucky. We found each other against impossible odds. That's not luck. That's fate." Fate, the moon goddess, destiny, whatever we want to call it. I'm just grateful. As the years passed, Leilani settled fully into her role as queen. She became known throughout the realm and beyond for her compassion, her intelligence, and her fierce protection of the vulnerable. The network of safe houses grew into a comprehensive support system for Omegas across multiple territories. Other packs began adopting the Northern Realm's progressive laws. On the 5th anniversary of their mating, Theo surprised her with a memorial garden. It was dedicated to the Shadowpine Pack and all the wolves who'd been lost to the Omega trafficking trade. At its center was a statue of a wolf howling at the moon, and carved into the base were the names of everyone from Leilani's original pack. "Theo, it's beautiful. They deserve to be remembered. Your family, your pack, everyone who was lost. Their memory lives on through you, through the work you're doing, through our daughter who carries your brother's name." Leilani traced the carved letters of her parents' names, then her brother's. "I wish they could have met you. My mother would have loved you. My father would have pretended to be stern, but he would have approved. And Kai would have followed you around asking a million questions about being a king. I wish I could have known them. But I see them in you every day. Your mother's creativity, your father's quiet strength, your brother's kindness." They stood there together as the sun set, holding hands, surrounded by the ghosts of the past and the promises of the future. Leilani thought about the girl she'd been, terrified, broken, standing on an auction block with no hope left. That girl couldn't have imagined this life, this love, this purpose. But she'd survived. And in surviving, she'd found everything she never knew she needed. "I'm happy. After everything, after all the pain and fear, I'm actually happy." Theo pulled her close, and she rested her head on his chest, listening to his heartbeat. "Good. You deserve every bit of happiness this life can offer. And I'm going to spend every day making sure you have it." "Every day? That's a lot of pressure." I'm the Alpha King. I can handle a little pressure. They laughed together, and the sound carried on the evening breeze, mixing with the rustle of leaves and the distant laughter of their daughter playing with her nursemaid. The northern realm was at peace. The Omega trafficking trade was nearly eradicated, and two mates stood in a memorial garden, alive and in love despite everything the world had thrown at them. It was more than Leilani had dared to hope for on that terrible night at the auction. It was more than she'd thought possible during those dark weeks of captivity. But it was real, and it was hers, and she'd never take a single moment of it for granted. Because she'd been bought for 10,000 gold by an Alpha King who saw her worth when she couldn't see it herself. And that transaction, which should have been the end of her story, had instead been the beginning of everything that mattered. She was Leilani, Queen of the Northern Realm, mate to Theodore, mother to Kaya, and survivor of the darkness. And her story wasn't one of tragedy, it was one of triumph, of love found in unlikely places, of strength discovered in moments of weakness. It was a story worth telling. It was a life worth living. And it was only just beginning. Did you enjoy this story? Share your thoughts in the comments section below. We love hearing from you. Part 2 is available now, so click the link in the description box to continue the journey. Also, let us know where you're watching from so we can give you a shout out in our next video. Sending love to our amazing viewers from New York, Sydney, Australia, the UK, Canada, Belgium, California, Singapore, and so many more places around the world. Don't forget to like, subscribe, and click the notification bell so you never miss any of our captivating stories. Love, Aurora.